In Kazakhstan, the craft developed over the centuries, leaving a legacy of unique products of artisans, amazing wealth of artistic imagination, and the perfection of form. A respect for one's heritage, traditional cultural values, these are the main tasks of the current generation. The history of folk crafts is a record of creative research and the discoveries of folk artists. The art of the Kazakh people, their national traits and traditions, were formed and perfected for centuries. Folk art stores in itself a historical memory and national heritage. Masters of folk art have bit by bit collected and continue to collect the experience of previous generations, multiplying them and transferring their skills from one generation to the next. Even in primitive societies, a human being has sought to stand out from among his own kind. For this, he began to decorate his appearance. Later, clothing was used not only to protect a person from the cold or from the scorching sun, or insect bites and teeth and claws of wild animals, hits of arrows and spears, but it was also used to express the specifics of who a person was. His social position, belonging to a particular tribe or race, and also the costume carried religious and mystical significance. Over the centuries of costume art development, mankind has invented countless methods of manufacturing. The raw materials for the production of fabric were fibers of animals, vegetable origin, wool, silk, cotton, flax, hemp, and others. Since then, clothing has become a decoration and has become inextricably linked with beauty and goodness. Often costumes were decorated using different techniques, as it has one goal: to convert even a coarse homespun cloth into a beautiful costume. It was an attempt to make a costume look unique. For that, such techniques as embroidery, dyeing, different techniques of fabric painting, artistic weaving, drawing of webs of tissue flaps, embossed leather, weaving, and inlays, and many others were used. This became a foundation for the mastery of sewing and costume design. Currently, the making of national costumes belongs to an almost lost craft. Folk costumes are distinguished with bright originality. They are priceless, inherent property of the people's culture, accumulated over centuries. The clothing has passed a long way in its development, and it is closely linked with the history and traditions of the nation. The unique costume designer Shulpan Mashrapova, with whom we were able to meet, has dedicated all of her creative capacity to the creation of original national costumes and costumes of different historical periods. Shulpan Mashrapova started her professional career with the successful completion of the Kazakh State Academy. And not by chance, in her family, her parents are creative people, and her mother is a costume designer, while her father is a graphic artist. Shulpan Mashrapova has been sharing her knowledge and skills with students for many years while teaching at the university. Shulpan's productions can be seen at the exhibitions of applied arts and at contests for clothing design. Her work has been highly praised and reportedly got the first place of prizes, as the best collection of folk costumes. Her work is often in demand in films, and as an artist, she works in this field. She sees costumes as a tool that help to reveal a character's personality. So, looking into the shop of Shulpan Mashrapova, we found her working on the costumes of the wandering Kazakh singers, Salseri. The master told us that in the past, theaters and song presentations of wandering artists were one of the brightest and the most favorite leisure activities of inhabitants of the Kazakh steppe. Sal and Siriz went from village to village, bringing their residents not only news, but also feelings of holiday. They created poems, songs, and participated in itis. Sal and Siriz were poets, improvisers, composers, and singers at the same time. We asked the master, from where did she derive the information, and how did she find out about the nature of the costumes from our ancestors? Shulpan told us that many questions are answered in archaeological findings and survived manuscripts, which kept the description of the clothes. Kazakhstan's masters carefully and thoughtfully studied the history of the costumes, using in her work the traditional folk clothing technology of cutting and embroidery, adhering to the symbolism of various parts of the costume, specific to their owners. We have learned from the master that the costume is a certain system of garments and elements, united by a common plan and purpose. And while developing a suit, at first you must necessarily take into account the connection of time. Immerse yourself in that era, to imagine and to feel the person with whom they would wear the costume. This determines the choice of the materials and its overall design. The artist is always a person who gives birth to images that he embodies in his work. And no matter what kind of artistic activity a person is engaged in, the imagination plays a leading role in the work. It helps to perceive reality, to feel the beauty of the surrounding objects and natural phenomena. Imagination helps in building the image of the costume, which would cause the viewer to have a certain emotional response. The creative process is complex and unique. Each artist finds his own way to solve the problem on the basis of imaginative experience, professionalism, and artistic vision. This is the secret of the unique work. We were lucky enough to follow the process of creating a historical costume. How has it all begun? As we have already said, with the study of historical material. Based on the imagination, building the image of the costume and its owner. The next important step is to work on the drawings and sketches of the costume. The work of the artist, designer, appeals to geometry in its necessary forms of composition and structure analysis. The process of the artist being continuous constantly reveals the beauty of the line, the material, the color, and it is important to keep the shape and the associative link with the original. Therefore, the master carefully approaches the choice of fabrics, colors, and composition. Fur, leather, metal buckles and buttons, all of the parts and elements of the future costume have great value and meticulously are worked out. Then the master produces or selects the appropriate template. Picking up the necessary tools, Chopin began to reveal the future product. She draws a piece of soap on the fabric. During the process, we have learned that the suit should not only historically be true, but it also has to have all the features of real, authentic national dress. After all, in Kazakhstan, nature is incredibly beautiful, but also very harsh. In the spacious steppe, there are strong winds, and in the mountain valleys, the heat during the day can dramatically drop to freezing temperatures at night. And clothing should not only be aesthetically beautiful, but above all, reliable, and protect people from the cold, heat, wind, and rain. The details of the future costume are sewn together. The sleeves are added to the main construction of the chapan. It is decorated with various designs and laces. Chopin starts the production of the headwear. It is always difficult and painstaking work. The master arranges skin of wild animals, wolf, lynx, and fox on her desk. The use of fur in the national costumes is not an accident. After all, fur is not only proved to be warm and beautiful, but it also carries a religious and a mystical significance, which came to us from our ancestors. Indeed, if we look at the beliefs of our ancestors, we can see that the basis of the Scythian fine art is an animal style, images of animals made in a special manner. The main dynamic storyline of the animal style is the scene of laceration of herbivores by a predator for centuries. It is the personification of power of death and struggle with the power of life and light. The beliefs and cults of worship associated with wild animals ensured the success when hunting and gave warriors invulnerability and health, and gave the families prosperity. The headpiece is immediately transformed and becomes serious and warlike in appearance, although such malachi was worn by the harmless vagrant singers such as Sauls and Siris. For expressiveness, the master paints the half-open mouth of the wolf, which creates a very expressive effect, a bared mouth. Chopin finalizes the details, and we can see an incredibly beautiful dress. With great interest, we are studying her other ready-made costumes of Sauls and Ceres. Immediately, our imagination begins to draw images of wandering singers, and it seems that you already have heard the songs and the dumbra sound. Once we've experienced the atmosphere of creativity of Chopin Mashrapova, and we've learned one thing, that preserving the traditions and establishment of the national costumes opens in front of us beautiful folk art. It is a testament to the rich imagination of the Kazakh people, their fine artistic taste, creativity, and excellence. Each type of art inherits its own field of activity, their ideas, tools, and the forms of realization. The end goal is the same: to serve people, to help them become better, both spiritually and physically. The alluring infinity of the Kazakh steppe. It is of full color and smell, and the sounds of life. Here lived the legendary warrior tribes and nomads. They were free as the wind, and they only moved when they found life. They didn't know of any other houses except of a yurt made by felt. We slept on felt and dressed in clothes made of felt. Felt witnessed weddings and births and deaths, the great military campaigns and communication with the gods. Felt guarded us from the cold and misery, evil spirits and enemies' arrows. Everything in their hard life was associated with felt. In the next program, we will introduce you to a master whose life is inextricably linked with felt. His technique and work is indeed unique.